But chapter 13 is also rich in content, and the best way to divide the content is right after conflict number 2. So we'll cover conflicts 1 and 2 tonight, and then next week, wrap it up with 3 through 6. We're introducing a new idea in the sense that when it comes to conflict review or content review, the idea of boundaries is that we need to choose to be righteous, have standards in our lives. We need to be responsible, respectful, and humble. And when we bring someone into our lives, whoever that might be, of course, in this case, even the church, our spiritual siblings, we need boundaries for them to help us grow, and the Bible is filled with such illustration. But we need to prioritize these values so that we can grow and mature the way God desires, putting Him first in all things. We need to avoid, this will help us avoid conflict, but it also, not just by prevention, helps us face conflict, manage it the way that we should for growing purposes. Last week, we focused on the circumstantial conflicts from without, when things are just not managed well. But tonight's focus will begin looking at conditions from within. We're not perfect. We don't have it all together. Even if we think we do, when we bring someone else into our lives, we realize areas that we haven't even grown or touched. We're not even aware of conditions in our lives that cause problems in the relationship. So that's where it's fun to learn more about yourself from others or that spouse than you ever had before. And this list is a summary template for your mind to put information. Remember, we're only dealing with the first 2 tonight. But these are the 6 kinds of conflict that these authors have categorized, what we call arguments. Well, let's look at how these are playing out. What are the similarities? They've listed 6 kinds of conflicts, and we've all been through just about all of these. The sin of one spouse. When it's just blatant, someone has sinned, and it's against the spouse, and it has to be dealt with. Conflict 2 will deal with also the immaturity or brokenness of one person. We have, whether we know it or not, a lot of unresolved and or still tender spots of our soul from past hurts. Of course we do. And situations will bring those to the surface. Well, they'll at least make us feel a certain way, and we're not sure why sometimes. And then awareness is empowerment. We are able then to trace the source and then with clarity pursue a path for help. And then next week we'll talk about hurt feelings that are no one's fault, just conflict. No one's fault, but still hurt feelings, and why. Conflict desires, that's where preferences. No one has the exact same preference all the time, and that causes, like, where do you want to go to eat tonight? That kind of thing. Number 5, desires of one person versus the needs of the relationship. So when there's no one that ever sacrifices and always gets the desires, the relationship suffers when one always gets what he or she prefers. That's interesting, and it doesn't teach what a relationship can be also about. Conflict 6 is known versus unknown problems. And this, we'll wait for next week on that because it's kind of vague right now. But conflicts 1 and 2 is what we'll focus on tonight. But first, by tradition, I love sharing some memes, and these are some educational, some funny. People have varying views and opinions and feelings about these things. Just everybody's different. These differences are bound to, that is inevitable, to create conflicts and misunderstandings. All right, that's worthy of our time. This is to be humorous to some who've made jokes recently, but it's funny if you think about it. Hopefully there's no follow-through to this, but conflict is inevitable. Combat is optional, and sometimes you feel like putting on those boxing gloves and taking care of the argument, but no, let's not do it that way. Let's do it with words and understanding and maturity, but that's just funny for you. In too many marriages, though, marital conflicts, so many couples work too hard at winning the argument and too little time winning the heart. There's a lot of applications. Not what you say, it's how you say it, or sometimes it's realizing that it's not about right and wrong. Sometimes it's about expressing your view, but it's not always going to convince someone to think just like you. And there's so many ways to process this. But make sure, another way to say it is sometimes you win one thing and lose something else. Let's make sure we stay focused on what's most important. Conflicts are not a sign that you've married the wrong person, simply that you are human. I appreciate that. I thought I'll use it, But when I read memes like that, I think, that's kind of fluffy. When I say fluffy, I'm not talking about their pillows. I'm talking about just cotton candy, advice. But I'm thinking, okay, what do I do with that information? What's the potency of it? It's actually hidden, not by succession, in the first statement. Conflicts are not a sign that you've married the wrong person. And then I would go a different direction with advice from that. But here's the idea. Conflict is merely the price, interesting to use that word price, that couples pay for a deeper level of intimacy. This implies they know going into the relationship, ideally, that there will be conflict, and so you not avoid but face them as proper. Whatever kind of conflict there is, requires a different approach. So if you know what they are, the approach might help you grow and mature. So use that as a stepping stone for maturity. Here's one that is not good. Communication. Honey, if I agreed with you, then we'd both be wrong. Don't do that. Don't think that. Don't say that. It's like, ouch. It's more manifested by something like this. That one catches my eye. Yeah, that might be where it leads to. But when opinions differ, the one with the biggest mouth wins. That's not good advice. It's a proverbial truth, sadly, but you can win an argument and still be wrong. And I'm not going to reference this in elders' meetings because in the years past at different congregations, I've been at men's meetings, and I'm sad to say that sometimes the one with the loudest argument gets the way sometimes, and that's not right. So I would prefer to have a humble spirit, use strong words, and have discussion. I sometimes say, you go first, but I will go next. And yeah, it's going to be a much better approach than that. So let's not do that. Here's one that's just simple. I referenced meetings, and so this stood out to me. We need to form a conflict resolution team to settle the dispute over who should be chosen for our conflict resolution team. The redundancy and irony of so many of that. You either like that or you don't, but it's funny. In relationships, hey, we're just focusing on the marriage, the husband and the wife, and in this case, conversations happen, and I'm going to replay this 1-minute video, which now we can and will see so much more behind. You're going to see faults on both spouses and so many problems in such a short time manifested. However, this is the official first video to this portion. And right after that, I'll let the authors go into the second video. I don't think that you've seen, but it summarizes the 6 types of conflicts. And then we'll get into the chapter and go as much as we can to finish points 1 and 2. So, introduction video, you've seen this one, but then the authors explain it by summary. The audio jingle at the end. Appreciate Weldon for assisting with our respect for preference in this Bible study setting. And here we go. Enjoy this review.
We're home. Honey, you should have been there. Danny is really getting good with a bat, and Katie threw off 2 runners at second base. And I am a little tired, so I think what I'm going to do is catch the end of the game on TV and then maybe take a nap.
Hey, I'm glad you spent time with the kids, and I appreciate you getting started on the garage. But now, I have a number of things I need to get done, and you're going to take a nap?
When did napping become a crime?
I didn't say it was a crime. It's just that when there's so much to be done around here, I get irritated when you're lazy on the weekends.
Lazy? You forget that I work all week. You know, I think the problem is you being compulsive. Do you ever just sit and relax? You're a whirlwind of activity all the time.
Right, well, what's a better use of time? Is you watching the tube or finally getting a project done around here?
Maybe you should be spending more time with me and the kids on weekends instead of being so busy all the time.
Sadly, that's a script that's played out in too many scenarios. So let's let the authors introduce us to the 6 categories.
In case you haven't noticed these past 6 weeks, or even in your own years of marriage, when you're working on your marriage, even when you're sensing growth in your marriage, you're still going to have conflict. What you might not have noticed, though, is this. Not all conflict is the same, and the rules are different for different types of conflict. In many conflicts, there's really no right or no wrong. And in this session, we want to help you figure out what's behind the conflict you're having. Then you may be better equipped to find a solution acceptable to both of you and to the relationship as well. So let's look at 6 common marital conflicts.
Conflict number 1 is due to the sin of one spouse. In this simple scenario, there is a culprit. One spouse has sinned against the other. There's a true infraction, not an imagined one. And there's no shortage of areas in which we can sin. Angry outbursts, loss of self-control, impatience, critical attitudes, lying, controlling behavior, name-calling, selfishness, or even addictions. Humility and grace are the two most important attitudes that the Bible suggests in dealing with someone else's sin. Do not minimize the sin of your spouse, and ask him or her not to minimize yours. Go tough on the issue, and here's the key, but soft on the person. Like Jesus said, and like he did, face sin with both grace and truth.
The immaturity or brokenness of one person leads to conflict number 2. All of us will fall short of the demands of life, but most people get married totally unaware of their spouse's shortcomings. In every relationship, the reality of the two people involved, like their immaturity and their brokenness, really eventually surfaces. And when it does, it's very important to face that reality and deal with that reality. Equality and mutuality, instead of an attitude of being superior, can really solve a lot of problems if you're working as a team. Make the equality mutual. Make the problems mutual, so then you can help each other.
Conflict number 3 comes with hurt feelings that are no one's fault. Because we all have hurts and things to which we're sensitive, innocent things will sometimes set us off. What is important is that we learn how to deal with this kind of hurt where no one's really wrong. After all, marriage is a place where old hurts inevitably get stepped on. But old hurts can heal as you respond differently to your spouse than he's been responded to in his, quote, past life. Though you can't fix your spouse, you can become a healing agent with empathy, understanding, non-defensiveness, and care.
Conflicting desires are at the root of conflict number 4. Whenever you have two people, you'll have some conflicting desires. After all, two different people bring differences to the table. In fact, your differences are really part of what brought you together. You complement each other. Normally, two people develop a pattern of give and take, and differences really get negotiated, but sometimes there's a stalemate. Instead of fighting for your own way, give in to the preference of your spouse as a learning and stretching experience. Try to see the activity through your spouse's eyes. You might learn to enjoy something you never thought possible. Your marriage relationship can grow you and expand you if you let it. So let it.
Conflict number 5 is at the core a conflict between the desires of one person versus the needs of the entire relationship. Sometimes the desire of one spouse conflicts with the needs of the relationship itself. The problem comes when either the marriage always wins or an individual always wins. The marriage benefits as each member grows, but keep it in balance. Make sure that the marriage gets served first. Also, over the long haul, see that the marriage sometimes goes on the back burner at times for each individual member, and that each member has learned that the marriage is more important than his or her individual wants.
Known versus unknown problems fuel conflict number 6. We all have aspects to our personalities and character that we don't know about. As King David said, "Who can discern his errors? Forgive my hidden faults." David knew there were things about himself he didn't know. In marriage, your spouse may know more about you than you do. Learn what your spouse knows about you, then work together to solve the problem. Furthermore, you may both become aware of problems that you hadn't known about before.
After you talk about these 6 conflicts, we'll consider how to solve conflicts with the spouse who supports the idea of boundaries as well as with a spouse who doesn't.
All right. I get into that and I hear something new every time. So that's a preview of where we're going, and I'm excited. Let's then advance in our content. Most of the chapter is filled with illustrations, and that's for purposes of application. The authors want to make sure they do their part from all their years of experience to share stories in a way that help us apply them to our lives. So I hope that you learn something about yourself, or begin the process of learning things about yourself that you've never known before, or always knew, just never was able to pinpoint and understand like you may from this point forward. So I'll begin and dramatize the reading for emphasis' sake. I'll be happy to read from, and this is numbered for you on the book, page 170 in the book. Conflict is not all the same. The rules are different for different kinds of conflicts. For example, if you come home late without calling, then confession and an apology may just be in order, of course. Like, just when I was walking out the door, someone else called, and if I missed that 5-minute window of traffic, the volume causes me to have to wait through 3 green lights in order to get there. It's an explanation for sure. But if you are disagreeing with where to go for dinner, no one should have to grovel as if one has committed a grievous sin. No, nevertheless, we run into couples that do that exact thing. They feel that every conflict has a right and a wrong. And instead of trying to resolve an issue, they argue, making an issue as to who is right. It is amazing how creative someone can get in defending rightness of his or her position. In this case, he says when she might be talking about how the couple is going to spend a vacation, for example. And we've all had conversations and preferences of how to spend time, and everyone chooses to vacate differently, if at all. But nonetheless, I'll just add this personal comment. Terry knows that I'm the type that I don't like to travel to a place, but I like to be there. And I would probably on my own not initiate going anywhere. I like staycations a lot better, but we prioritize a couple things in our marriage: her birthday, our anniversary. I have typically not planned anything ever for my birthday, and upon awareness of that, mutual awareness, Terry started planning for my birthday. So I appreciate that. And I heard something in that video more: when the marriage always wins, there is something lacking that causes conflict because, hey, what about me? And I don't even realize it. So it's amazing the way that the devil can work if we're not careful. Into the next paragraph, it says, in this class, we want to help you distinguish what kind of conflict you are having. Then you may be better equipped to find a solution. So let's go to conflict number 1. In our minds, for the next few minutes, let's focus on conflict when you're facing the sin of a spouse. The authors do a great job, so I'll just get to this word for word, just about the same. In this simple scenario, there is a culprit. Someone has done something wrong, sinned against the spouse. There is a true infraction in this scenario, not an imagined one. This person did this. There is no shortage of areas in which we can sin. And notice, I'm going to say a long list of things, and I'm going to mention this. We're all guilty. Which one tempts you more often? We're all guilty. What tempts you? The 3 branches of sin: the lust of the eyes, flesh, and pride of life. So here are some categories Satan uses. Well, sexual sin, obviously, angry outbursts, loss of self-control, impatience, critical attitudes, judgmentalism, out-of-control spending or thievery, lying, deception, critical attitudes, substance abuse, controlling behavior, emotional injurious behavior, calling names or belittling, misuse of power, pride, selfishness, greed, jealousy, envy, and conceit. Do you want to be in a relationship with these? Well, to a degree, we all are. So how are we dealing with these? All right. The first, and I should have bolded this, the first thing to consider in facing the conflict that comes from an individual's sin is, I'm going to do this now, the attitude of the spouses confronting the sin. The attitude of the one confronting the sin. Even the best of people do what the Bible calls falling short of the glory of God. The best thing to do is in face of the sin of the spouse is to demonstrate the same attitude of God then towards someone who sins. And how does God do this? According to Ephesians 4:32, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other, just as in Christ God forgave you. And I'll add this comment that congregations that aren't aware of their own shortcomings are sometimes the most judgmental, stern, legalistic, condemning congregations. You can walk in and smell that spirit, and that's not very loving. That's not the balance of grace with truth. And the rest of this is based off of an illustration. So listen carefully to the illustration, and then the process may apply to you and whatever you might be going through or have or may in this category. Jessica and Reggie came into counseling because she discovered he had been looking at pornography on the internet. At first, she was very hurt. She felt betrayed. Then she felt that there must be something wrong with her, or else he would not have been looking at pictures of other women. But after the initial chaos of such a discovery, she displayed remarkable grace in one of our sessions. I, Dr. Cloud, asked, "How do you feel about this?" And then, after some time, "I guess I'm past the hurt now." "How did you do that?" "I just started thinking about him. When I saw the kind of snare he was in and how bad he felt about himself, I thought about what would drive him to such a thing. I felt sorry for him, the shame he felt. I just want you to help him and find out the reason and help him with it. I know that I'm not perfect either. I don't want him to do this, but I guess I started to understand his hurt." All right. This is maturing for both. Reggie began to cry. The grace his wife showed him was far different than what he had ever received in his life, and much different from how he responded to himself. He turned to her, cried in her arms, and said, I'm so sorry I've hurt you like this." And from this point on, Reggie was a different guy. He grasped the work of therapy and recovery with a passion, seeing it as a project that he must do to not fall short of the grace he had been given. Interesting, the perspective of Christianity. I was reminded of the verse about the grace of God, that it is His kindness that leads to repentance, Romans 2:4. Jessica had offered the two most important attitudinal things about the Bible offers or instructs in dealing with someone else's sin. When someone's close to you and they have sin, here's your approach: humility and grace. She did not approach the sin of her husband with the idea that she was someone better than he. As Paul puts it in Galatians 6, "Brothers, if anyone is caught in a sin, you who are spiritual, restore him gently. But watch yourself, or you also may be tempted. Carry each other's burdens, and in this way you will fulfill the law of Christ." He says Jessica did not lord it over Reggie, saying that this was his sin and not hers. She identified with the mutual position that they both had before God as sinners. She realized she was not perfect, then gave him the same kind of grace God gives her. She restored him gently and watched herself and her own attitudes make sure she remained humble. It proved to be an important aspect of Reggie's own repentance. And I'll add this, at the same time, she did not minimize the sin. There was no minimizing the sin. And I like how the authors say this very important issue, that if you don't grow in grace, you become a legalist and condemning at that. And everyone no one's going to go to heaven. So this is one of the most difficult things for some people. These people feel that if they're going to go full of grace and humility, that they can't be tough on the sin. Well, focus and balance. Focus on Jesus. A friend of mine once said, "Go soft on the person and hard on the issue." This is what Jessica did. She was honest, called internet pornography sin, and talked about her hurt and betrayal, but did not let Reggie's sin go unconfronted. So she took a stance according to her values, the basic standards of boundaries here. And couples need to take a hard stand against any value that, or anything that violates their values. Pornography violates many values, such as, and if it's not an issue, I'd be concerned, faithfulness, honesty, holiness, loving God, and loving other people. Page 173 of the book says, don't minimize the sin, and ask him or her not to minimize yours. That's interesting. We're opening up a door of perception and methodology here. Ultimately, this will be best for you both in the relationship. But remember, as God is with you, go soft on the person. And like Jesus, face sin with bold grace, or both grace and truth. We can't deny the truth, but we have to have grace. The process, with this illustration in mind, goes like this. Number one, look at your own attitude. And this is something every minister has to do. If they don't, it's dangerous. Rid yourself of judgmentalism. Employ the standard of the Word of God, but don't kick God off of His throne, okay? He's the gracious God, and we need to represent that, the truth in love. Rid yourself of condemnation, of shame and pride. Look at the log in your own eye. Never forget, lest you fall. Show mercy, and the standards that you apply will be back to you. The standard of God's Word is, it's tough. Show mercy. Identify with your spouse as a fellow sinner, because I want the mercy of God. Speak to the issue directly, though. Number 2, speak to the issue directly. It's like spotlight it, laser point it. Let your spouse know that you know, and tell him that what he is or is not doing right. If the sin is against you, let him know how you feel. Talk about the hurt. Talk about how it affects you. And Gary Smalley would encourage you to use word pictures in ways that they can relate to and understand, maybe that in your own words they cannot. Don't shame him, but be honest and use I statements, not T. That's a typo. I scanned and converted this for my own benefit, so there's some typos here. Use I statements. Avoid the you. It's I. 3, a boundary-loving spouse will acknowledge the wrong and apologize. Accept it. Offer forgiveness. Reaffirm your love and acceptance. Those points were shared in a sermon on the marriage series not too long ago. Point 4, when emotions are not strong, timing is key. Wait a while if you have to. Talk about the problem objectively, not, and just casually. Talk about it to see if there's any further help that might be needed. And I like this. Even though he may have confessed and repented, underlying issues may still need to be addressed. He might need outside help or professional resources. Offer your support. Help to solve the problem. Point 5, here's the process here. The counselor says, agree on a follow-up plan. And this is common, I guess, common sense once you hear it, but you may not think of it on your own. It's right there, so that makes sense, and so it's easy to apply, and it's so good. It's not a lot of work, it just takes work, and it's well worth it. Quote, if I notice something again, this is what you say to the spouse as you're addressing the issue. This is not like, you're not policing, he says, but you're being a team partner. If I notice something again, how do you want me to help you? You're soliciting accountability, you see. What do you want me to do to enforce those boundaries? This way you can become a team player to deal with the problem and not be a police officer, but in this case, you might, in the relationship, want to talk to him about bringing other resources, such as friends, counselors, to help hold you accountable. The important issue is that you are together as a team to fight the reoccurrence. This applies to any situation, of course, but it assumes that both of you want what is best as you strive to help each other grow. So that's conflict number 1, and kind of how it looks. That's a good way to approach conflict of another person's sin: humility and grace, and good conversation, and a path for mutual accountability. Good. We have the time to cover now conflict number 2. This does give an illustration, not as lengthy, but it's well worth our time. And I was just noticing, oh, no, wow, you know what? Yep, no, that's funny. We'll begin and see how far we go. Normally, the bell rings 10 till, so we'll make it happen. Shifting gears, the conflict 2 category is immaturity or brokenness of one person. You might have to do some more introspective work on this one. Oh boy, and like you've been told before, I have a lot of pink highlighted statements, so when I emphasize that, it's highlighted pink because that's the key golden nugget of advice. Some typos. Jerry was frustrated with his wife, Jenny. They had decided early on in the marriage that it was important for her to be at home with the children. They agreed on this. Every couple's different. They can work out things on their own, right? Like this is what y'all do. That's how you do it. So they had divided the duties. He worked hard making a living for the family. Running the household was her responsibility. Okay, whatever. It's a common template. If it works for y'all, good. But Jenny was not pulling her weight. Many things were not getting done. For example, Jerry expected her to clean the house, do the laundry, have dinner ready when he got home from work. But he would come home to a messy house, undone laundry, and no dinner. So obviously there's some things manifesting as something's not jiving from what they prior discussed. In addition, she was tired when he came home, and more of the parenting responsibilities fell on his shoulders. Okay, compounding problems. Jerry nagged Jenny to do more, and she became angry with him, telling him she was already doing all she could. He couldn't understand why she couldn't do more, and would tell her, that's just how life is. You just have to buckle down and do it. I will never say such things, frankly. Ever. I am working too hard. She would not feel very helped by this advice. She alternated between feeling bad and also feeling resentment towards him for pushing her, of course. Finally, they decided to get some counseling. Good. After I talked with them for a while, it was clear to me that Jenny had some significant problems and that Jerry had some significant shortcomings in empathy and understanding. I felt for him in that he was having to carry more of the load than he had agreed to. But the way he was handling his wife was way out of line. In reality, his behavior was going to make her improvement more difficult. Jenny was depressed. This was the first reality they both had to deal with. Just trying harder was not going to fix her depression until she dealt with her depression. Until that, she would lack energy and lack concentration and motivation, focus. In addition, she did not have the structure in her character to manage a house in the way they both desired. Growth was needed on both sides. First, Jerry had to get it. I had to do several things with him, he said. He had to learn, in page 175, to accept the reality of who Jenny was, depression and disorganization included. He had to learn that he was married to all of her infirmities included. And he had to learn what unconditional love means. I had to coach him in the realities of depression and also Jenny's very real inabilities. She did not have the ability to just snap out of it, nor did she have the ability to just get organized. Both were real limitations he was going to have to accept and love her in the midst of. So, second, Jerry had to learn not to be judgmental of her, but supportive and find ways he could work with her. This included giving up some of the things he wanted that she could not do. Expectations is the key, so giving up expectations was not easy for him, but he was open and teachable, albeit frustrated the whole time. It helped when he looked at some of his own inabilities. That's humbling. We tend to focus on our strengths and need to be humbled from time to time. And could not empathize and identify with hers. But he had some failures in his own life, and I helped him see that she was no different. This is difficult for her in this as maybe this is for you. And Jenny had to accept herself. She had been fighting the inability. This realization is an important step in fixing anything. She had been stuck in the shoulds, been saying to herself, I should be able to do more. I should not be so unorganized. She was still protesting the reality. She had to get to the point of saying, I would like to be not depressed, to be more organized, but the reality is this is not where I am. Now is the question, what am I going to do about it? Once Jenny owned this, change could begin. And once she faced her inability, she could get to work. So we developed the following plan, and these principles apply to all. We'll cover as much as we can. Number one, work on the depression. That's a mission. Work on it. Here's how. Jeannie saw her long-standing depression as a real problem and began treatment for it. She took medication, sought proper counseling. In a matter of not days, not weeks, in the legitimate cases, months sometimes, in this case months for her, she saw real progress, and she had much more energy and concentration to face and solve some of her other problems. Good. Point 2, the phase of adjusting to reality. Jerry and Jeannie both had to reorganize their life. Yeah, they had to reorganize their life because this was what we started with, but that's not reality. That's the ideal, but that's not the real. So they had to give up some of their ambitious plans for a while until their problems were better. Their original plan had included 2 fully functioning people, and they did not have that. Interesting. So they agreed, and none of us have that. So they agreed to cut back on what they wanted until they got to a better place. That becomes the goal. Phase 3, work on, in their case, the disorganization. Jenny saw that her lack of structure was a real problem and that one more New Year's resolution was not going to make her more disciplined. She joined an accountability group with friends who helped her take some steps toward organization. Small steps, but important ones as well. And I'm going to add, and this is just an ad-lib thought, if you know you're going to the kitchen and you walk by 2 dirty glasses, there's no reason those dirty glasses should not be brought with you as you're going to the kitchen anyway. That's a small step, but it makes a huge difference. And I'm just saying that because I tell myself that all the time. Okay, Michael, you go in that direction. You're going that direction. Multitask. Okay. She joined an accountability group, mentioned that the next sentence or two. She asked an older woman in her church to help her acquire some skills that she had never learned. Hey, that's good. Let the older women teach the younger women. Everyone can be learning and teaching others. Making commitments to certain schedules and jobs was brand new for her. Think about that. Making commitments and sticking to your schedule. I'll be there at 4:30 and you show up at 4:15. That is amazing for some people, but they're working on it. Jerry and Jenny did very well. She worked through her depression and began to run the home in an acceptable way for both of them to reach their goals as a family. I love the rest of this, of course, but the people that God brings into our lives is to help us grow, and we welcome those differences because of that. If everything was like we always wanted, we'd be missing out on what all God intends for us to see. Their story teaches some valuable lessons for dealing with the conflict that comes from spouses' inability. Pink point. All of us will fall short of the demands of life. This is a difficult concept to accept for some. Most people get married totally unaware of their spouse's shortcomings, and we call this the honeymoon phase, where everything's just ideal, and then you see that this is the real, and we've got some issues here. So here's what we're going to do. He says some very helpful ways to go into that wake-up call stage that we mentioned in marriage, the wake-up call that we have problems and we don't know even what the problems are, and even then we don't know how to solve them. So here are some things to help. Accept the reality of yourself and your spouse. Both of you will be unprepared for some of the things in life. On page 177, it says, you will not have the emotional ability to weather some of the stresses in the way that you would like. Now, of course, God's always with us, but He's a resource, His Word, and His people. So it's not self-contained within you. Use your resources for growth as a couple. Or you will not have the skills to mature as an adult. When this happens, don't be surprised. Below are some common areas where normal people find they have brokenness from the past or some immaturity where they're just not equipped to perform as they or their spouse would like. And there's a list of them here. Relational abilities, parenting, emotional problems, lack of structure, financial inabilities, sexual difficulties, not having completed the two-ness of marriage, the oneness that is, the two make one, not having completely left home in your mind maybe, or sins of the past. Oh, no, let me reword this. He says, none of these are sins, they're just areas of immaturity, and marriage will help you in those ways. So accept those realities. We also see that we need to communicate the support to your spouse. This is so important. I'll just read the first line of this one. We do not grow when we are judged, nagged, condemned, resented, or subjected for some other lack of grace. Now that tests you in many ways in which you do cause growth, resolve and determination, but that's not the type of growth in the relationship that we're talking about. We do not grow when we are done these ways. So let's not give these ways to other people, if at all possible. 1 Thessalonians 5:14 does say, encourage the timid, help the weak, and be patient with everyone. Point 3 on page 178 says, face the issues as real problems. Don't just ignore. I've realized for years, I'm 43, and I go back to my 20s and my 30s, I've been very good at ignoring things. Some things are taken care of in God's own good time, and until I get the wisdom to address things perhaps, or to mention things, as I'm always thinking about how do I say this or bring this up. And this class has helped me so much, helped us so much. Just face the issues as real problems. And I think the idea is with honesty and grace is the key there. It requires holiness and humility. On the next page, mentioning point number 4, own your problems. This is so good. I'm just going to complete this like I said I would by reading this portion, 5 and 6. Here we go. Get a plan. Own your problems and get a plan. Point 4, if you are the one confronted with your own immaturity, own it. Be a boundary lover, one who loves to get feedback and heed it. I always want the future to be a better version of myself. So if we have the right relationships with people, we welcome that, don't we? Get a plan. Jenny and Jerry designed a plan to deal with their immaturity issues, and they received help from others and followed through with it. On page 179.6 concludes this. It says, make it mutual. I highlighted a few key areas we need to emphasize. The first sentence, guard against labeling one spouse as the problem person. This is never true. Just because Jenny had more noticeable problems did not mean that she was the only one who had some growing up to do. Neither of you is a complete person. You are both still growing up. Guard against the one who is the most, guard against, quote, the one who is the most functional being seen as the okay one. Our eyes can deceive us when there are many more problems deep within our soul. Our psyche can be so messed up like a Rubik's Cube. But God has what's actually called in that world, the God algorithm, the one way to make it all work. Usually, one of you has to grow more in the relational way and the other in the functional way. And those roles certainly get so locked sometimes by the spouse that the other needs to grow in those. Help each other in your areas of weakness. Remember, you are one now. And then he prints in the text, I'm so glad he gives biblical-based theology to this, Ephesians 5:28 through 33, and it's so good. Husbands, love your wives as your own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. And then skipping a few verses, each one of you, towards the end, verse 33, each one of you also must love his wife as he loves himself, and the wife must respect her husband. Love and respect. There isn't one-upmanship here. Both of you are loving the other as part of yourself. You are one. You are both in need of growth. Equality and mutuality can solve a lot of problems and help you face many conflicts. Make the equality mutual and make the problems mutual so that you can help each other. And at this point, I'm thankful that we, skipping a few pages, of course, got to where we're going. I forget sometimes on a Wednesday night if there are 2 bells, but I know the first one rang. We are going to skip to the prayer that we often emphasize and highlight some key points. I encourage you to pray these kinds of petitions for your own relationship. Something like, Lord, you are ever present in this challenging relationship called marriage, where conflict is inevitable. So give me grace, Lord, to live by the golden rule, the courage to die to self and self-centeredness, and give us both the wisdom to meet each other's needs, the sense of humor and perspective necessary to keep me from majoring on the minors, the awareness to call on you in prayer. Lord, grant me the wisdom and patience, kindness and love to have you help me grow and mature through the conflict. And that's the idea. People say things like that. It always happens, everything happens for a reason. Well, I would never say it that way personally, but I would ask for this understanding. Lord, teach me what I'm supposed to learn from this. Teach me what I'm supposed to learn from this. Whatever the cause, whatever the situation, help me grow from it. And it's amazing the lessons that are learned from perspectives that and experience you can't always put into words, but you know what? That's part of growing up and learning from one another. So may this lesson help your marriage. I thoroughly enjoyed studying this content, and I hope that you have too. Thank you for being here tonight. Next week, Lord willing, content for conflicts 3 through 6 will carry the time. And